Great. Good morning. How's everyone? Good. Kate, thank you so much. It is wonderful to have a number of senior champions who really understand the challenge and the opportunity we have of engaging young people as partners at USAID and working together. This week is always one of my favorite weeks because it really demonstrates kind of that sense of collective impact between the YouthPower annual meeting and flowing right into the Global Youth Economic Opportunity Summit. GYEO is also part of our Global Innovation Week at USAID this week, where we're highlighting innovation over about the next 10 days through a series of events that are going on in Washington to really say, how are we bringing innovation and looking at scale for what works in development? And as Kate articulated, at the heart of that is how we're engaging young people as partners, not looking at them as a beneficiary group, but really saying, what does it look like in democracy and governance or the education to employment and entrepreneurship pipeline? Kate talked about those key components. And if you think about the chair you're sitting on right now, it has 4 strong legs. And if you don't have all 4 legs equal length and strength, you don't have a good platform to build upon. And so she talked about that sense of the policy and the political will that exists there right now for understanding how we engage youth, about the power of the purse through YouthPower and many other mechanisms. We have a lot of different funding mechanisms, as all of you know, on how we're supporting youth programming with our missions and partners. And then thinking about programming that's based on evidence and really how we're building that evidence base and sharing it out with our staff to professionalize their work in the field, which is the #1 thing that our USAID mission staff have said they want is we need more professionalization. What does positive youth development really look like? How do we design it better? How do we work better with our partners on implementing it? But that 4th leg of that chair that you're sitting on is meaningful participation by young people. How do we really get beyond the rhetoric of engaging young people to what does that look like on a daily basis throughout, for our case, what we call our program cycle? So as we do an assessment, as we're looking at the design of a project, where are those entry ramp points for how we bring young people into the design of a project? As we move into the implementation phase, using, for example, some of our new tools like Youth Compass, where we can do post-award action planning with young people, moving from that into other ways that we're supporting youth-led sub-grants to carry out different activities similar to what we're doing in Uganda with the Young Leaders in Agriculture initiative, and then into the learning component of it, where we're really looking at evaluation and learning and monitoring evaluation. And I know some members of Restless Development are here that have been helping us to do some training of our staff to think about youth-led research on that. So really thinking of the different components within a program cycle where we bring young people meaningfully into this process is key. And so that's why the next 30 minutes, we wanted to start the day with the voices of young people about what their experiences are and what their challenge is to each and every one of us to kind of move to that next level of what it looks like. We know we're not there yet. USAID, when we do our conversations with our mission staff around the world, they are interested in figuring out how to do it more effectively, but they will all admit we're not there yet, and we're trying to find good examples of mechanisms, and that's where we really appreciate how we've worked with you in the field. So I want to jump right in and give the opportunity really to listen more to the experiences of these young leaders that we have here today. What we'll do is I'll ask them a series of questions and then really welcome your questions. We have about 30 minutes overall to talk a little bit more about this. But let me introduce, first of all, who we have with us today. Jabulani is Ngiri, did I pronounce it correct? Yeah. More or less. You'll let me go with this one. It's from Malawi. And he is one of the researchers at the Youth Think Tank in Malawi. And as such, he's been working a lot on GIS and remote sensing through some of his work as a student, also working with a network called NPOD Fish Node, working on action in both agriculture and climate change. And he'll be talking a little bit about his work in Malawi on engaging young people around those issues. We also have Alexis Tei, who's with Mercy Corps in Kenya, and she works on their work on learning and research there. And so Alexis has been doing some really interesting things in terms of the Youth Empowerment for Success program with Mercy Corps in Kenya, and she'll be sharing a little bit of how they've been mobilizing young people. And then lastly, we have Alicia Chavez, who is a coordinator for the Young Entrepreneurs Program in Morazon, El Salvador. And she's been working through support from UNDP with the ADEL system, the local development network system in El Salvador, as well as with Trias, which is a Swiss corporation, really working on how do we build a business incubator for young people. And as we were talking beforehand, she was talking about the importance of generating income for young people in El Salvador as an alternative to migration, and really giving that sense of opportunity to young people and how they're part of that process of that business incubator. So thank you so much for being here. And we also have Lisa at the end. Lisa is posing as a youth on the panel today, as am I. We are both lobbying for the age of youth to go up to 53, 54 years old. You know, we do have some countries in the world that are 49, so we're doing an intensive lobbying campaign to get 4 years added on and then 1 year each year. But she's helping with some translation. So she is our chief of party for the Puentes project, which is a YouthPower project in El Salvador. So thank you, Lisa. So to get started, if you wouldn't mind each telling us just a little bit about kind of the journey that you took to becoming a young leader. What was that defining moment? Kate shared with us a little bit of her own aha experience in Nepal. What was it that kind of led you and allowed you to become more engaged in your community civically, and then what helped you become a young leader? Would you mind starting us off?
All right. Thank you. I joined the Youth Think Tank program in February 2017. As it has been indicated, I'm working on a youth research project which is targeting the young people. And I joined in February on the program that is called Youth-Led Research. This research is targeting the young people, involving them in all steps of the project cycle. My work with research development has been exciting. Upon looking at the advert through different websites, I took it as a stepping stone that I have to apply. Upon applying, then I was successful to join the team. And what I can share with you today is how it has been and how I've been engaged with young people in Malawi and even the fellow researchers from different 7 countries that we are working together. On the first place, under research development, the program has been more interactive. We have been involved in all different stages of the project cycle. To be specific, I've also been involved in the different trainings that were conducted, whereby we were exposed to each and every step, and we were involved and we participated. We were making decisions to make sure that all the research activities are done rightly. This has been a good experience for me, and I've learned a lot. This helped me to fully engage the young people in Malawi to fully conduct the research. Another example, the experience I've had is that there's also a data analysis workshop we had, whereby after collecting the data, where we engaged the young people in Malawi to get their ideas regarding agricultural innovations and technologies, we were involved in data analysis, qualitative data analysis, whereby we transcribed the data and we brought out stories. We were doing all those things alone, the youth from different countries, after getting the data from the young people. So in short, we're fully engaged, and that has been my story up to date, that we managed to bring out the report on the views of the youth themselves through the youth as the researchers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting to note that Restless Development has used its Youth Think Tank network to help MasterCard Foundation, DFID, and even ourselves as we were doing some of our research on the youth imperative. So by engaging young researchers across the continent, it's really brought a voice of credibility into a lot of the design planning. So thank you for that work. Alexis, can you help us understand kind of your journey and what were those key points of what we've learned about how to better engage youth through your programs?
Thank you so much, Mike. I think critically for me, so I'm Kenyan, and the program I work in is in 6 African countries. So I think what was really critical for me is when I had to leave Kenya. So I studied in South Africa at a leadership academy, and this is the first time that it occurred to me that young people, and at that time I was maybe 15, 14, could actually have some stake and some say. And famously in Kenya, this, we say it in jest here, but there has been a serious discussion to shift what counts as a young person. And so in positions of leadership, consistently, particularly politically and even economically, much older set of people. So, there's a joke in universities in Kenya that if you're training to be a doctor, you have to wait until the old set dies because no one will ever retire. And so for us, it's like consistently being both visually and symbolically seeing only older people in power. It took quite a bit of shifting for me to think that now I don't have to wait 10, 20, 50 years for me to be able to do something meaningful. And so I think what for me was significant in that experience in this academy was that we were being allowed to test in what is essentially, in some ways, both a constructive and a safe space. So we were encouraged to develop organizations, and I set up a gallery, which for a young person is wild and seemingly impossible. And to me to think that, I can do it, and of course it failed, but the fact that I did it at that time I think has been critical for me to be able to push back on a lot of, even right now in this role, I'm consistently one of the younger people in the room. And so being able, with that, formative experience, being able to push back and say that actually I do have an important thing to say, and it's in your interest and all of us, to listen to me, and being able to raise my voice in that way. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Alicia, can you share a little bit about your work in El Salvador and what you've learned about how we effectively engage young people through your program?
Of course. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit of my story. Actually, I was born here in the United States of America, in the state of California, from a Mexican-American mother and a Salvadorian father. So that's why we went to live to El Salvador, and I have been living there since I was 6 years old. So my heart, it's from El Salvador, no? It's the country I have grown, and I have really known and feel like a Salvadorian. And also that's why my English is not very good. That's why I have some help here, but I will do my best. So I have been living in El Salvador. Then I went to study at Nicaragua. And when I graduated from college, everybody thought, even I thought, that I was going to come back here to the States and try to find a job and everything. But then I knew about a job position at Adel Morazan. Adel Morazan works contributing to the local economic development area of the Department of Morazan, one of the poorest departments of the country that was also very affected by the war, the civil war. And well, I started working there, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the people there, with my job there, with the things Adel Morazan does, so I decided to stay. So Adel Morazan and the people I met there changed my mind, changed my life, and since then I have been working there. My organization, Adel Morazan, and I have created a business incubator approach in which we help youngsters to create their own business, to generate their own income as an alternative to migration, because most of youngsters of El Salvador are migrating. Well, the main country is the United States of America. So I have learned a lot there about what do youngsters really want. We did like a small investigation, and almost 90% of youngsters said that they wanted to migrate. And when we asked them why do you want to leave, most of them said that they want to leave because they feel they don't have opportunities there. So we saw the track, we saw what we had to do, and that's where we began.
Alicia, starting with you again, can you tell us a little bit about specifically how you're engaging young people what are the techniques you're using that you find to be successful on mobilizing and engaging young people in meaningful ways in your work?
Okay, sure. Okay, so in this business approach that I just talked about, we have 4 stages. The first stage is identification. So, and this is actually one very important stage, because we have to identify not only what youngsters we're going to work with, but more than that, what they really want and what they really need. Because sometimes, as an adult, I consider myself an adult because I have a position in which I can decide, what to do and all that. But sometimes the idea that we have are not the same that they have. And for example, with this program, most of our youngsters are working on producing tomato. So what we did first was talk to them. Do you want to produce tomato, and how do you want to do it? If we had gone with them and talked about producing tomato just as their parents did, with the machete under the sun, I think they would have said, no, we don't want to do that. I mean, it's El Salvador, but we live in a different world. We don't want to do that. They want technology. So we offer them to work with greenhouse technology and to use specialized systems to water the plants and everything. So now they are doing that. They have constructed greenhouses and everything, and they got involved because we did something they liked. And I think that that's key in this kind of programs, not only offering opportunities, but opportunities that actually cover their needs and their wants.
Thanks so much. And I would just note, let's see, here we go. Can you hear me? There we go. I would just mention on my Facebook this morning, I saw a posting by our YouthPower project in Nicaragua that yesterday the youth group from Bluefields, which is on the Caribbean coast, won the national championships in robotics. So, so setting a high standard for young people of things they like is a great example of how this youth group from one of the poorest areas of Nicaragua just won the national robotics championship, which is pretty darn impressive. So thanks for that insight. Alexis, can you share some of those best techniques that you're finding to mobilize?
Sure. So just a little bit of background on the current program that I'm on. So yes, it's implemented by Mercy Corps, and we're in 6 African countries. And I think, as you can imagine, trying to find, as we're trying to do now, find some principles that apply across very diverse settings is pretty tricky. And so how we're thinking about what is, sort of our approach, very generally speaking, is that is taking into account a lot of the principles that YouthPower is pushing forward. This idea of intentionality. So from the very beginning, doing that like market sizing, as it were, like what exactly are the people we're trying to work with? If we say vulnerable populations and then we go on to say vulnerable youth, what exactly does that mean? And making sure that is in line with the young people we're working with. So I think for a good way to show how that applies in that starting point, and I think is very exciting in terms of youth research right now, is that we immediately thought like these are vulnerable populations. They don't have any job at all, and so we would come in and through a series of techniques we would hand them a job, and usually that's a very narrow idea of what that job looks like. And then we found that actually people here are managing a portfolio of incomes, and these different income streams mean that they're able to participate in different levels at different times of the program cycle, and so keeping that in mind was so critical in how we designed the program. But I think what's exciting with what we're trying to do is, one, this idea of making sure that the program itself is inclusive, and that takes different shapes in different countries. So making sure, for instance, in Uganda we have some rural programs that we're working really closely with women who often tend to be disenfranchised in those settings. In Tunisia, making sure that we're working with different people with different educational backgrounds. And so I think that idea of that lens, keeping that in mind, has been critical. But I think for me what is exciting about what we're doing is these hub models. So like, was mentioned today, making sure that you have partnerships with people. So instead of going in and setting up a whole new space, we find local CBOs, community-based organizations, local youth clubs, and then we sort of activate them, as it were, which means like equip them with some hardware, but critically equip them with skills in that capacity building aspect, and then drive funds through those community-based organizations. And then I think what's exciting is that we're trying to build small communities around those physical spaces. So, which is to say that now we equip a network, they're able to save there, and then they stay. So even when the program leaves, that community continues to persist. And I think, so driving that deliberately, but also making sure that you're building smaller communities that hopefully can have sustained engagement even after you step out, I think is what we're finding.
That's awesome. Excellent. And we were having a conversation with some of our young colleagues from Africa yesterday, and they were talking about there's about 350 social or innovation hubs now throughout Africa that bring together kind of the back-end resources of youth-led initiatives to allow kind of the front-end focus by these dynamic young social entrepreneurs to focus on where their passions lie. So thanks for that insight. Jabulani, if you could share.
Adding on that, the experience I've had with the research development on how the youth-led research is being approached shows that the youth are taken as partners, not the beneficiaries, as it has been with different perspectives. In this aspect is where we are engaged fully. It's where we are involved in different steps of the project cycle. I give you an example in project design. All the researchers were brought together. We were there bring in different ideas on how to frame the research questions, on how to develop the questionnaire. We developed the questionnaires. We pre-tested. So all steps were done by the youth, were done by us. So in such a doing, it brought some leading laws to us, whereby we took that thing with ownership, that we can do what is required, and we can get the right information for the young people. So the contributions that are there goes beyond being a researcher, but being a partner in the research cycle. In this regard, research development trusted us fully so that we are participating, and we also contribute to what is required for the research to go on properly and to get the right ideas. In addition to that, I've learned that youth engagement, taking the youth as partners, is the best model that has to be used when we want to bring in different programs that are important for the young people. This helps to build the skills and the competences among the young people. This is through the capacity building aspect. We were brought on board on how to do different steps in as far as research is concerned. That helped us to know exactly what are we supposed to do, not just the youth as the respondents through the study, but the youth as the ones to take the research and to collect the data and even to bring feedback. So the aspect that we're able to bring feedback helps to maximize the youth contribution. So it helps us to be in the decision-making processes. So as we are in the aspect of making decisions, giving back, and informing the staff, the research development staff, that contribution that is there, the linkages between the researchers and the staff helped a lot to make the whole process successful. It also helped to make the research more live, valid to the youth as the ideas were brought to book. So indeed, nothing for the youth without them. The program is successful, and if we really want to involve the youth, we have to take them on board, and we have to make sure they're involved in each and every step. So the youth think tank research is a good model that has to be adopted.
Thank you. Okay, Jabulani, so imagine that one or many of these people invite you to dinner, all right? Who's inviting him to dinner tonight, by the way? Raise your hand. Right there, Cassandra, she's taking you to dinner. Here's your moment where you want to tell implementers or donors, this is what we really need to improve the quality of youth engagement. This is what could be done better and where we need your support. What is, over dinner, what is it that you want to tell implementing partners and donors that they can be doing better to engage youth in meaningful ways?
Okay. The different donors and the implementing partners. The message to you this morning is that young people should not be sidelined in your different programs.
Should not be what?
Young people should not be sidelined in implementation of different programs. You have to involve them from all stages. And to be more specific, like you really need to get their voice. You really need to know what they want, and you really need to address their needs. If the needs of the youth will be addressed through the different programs you are implementing, you have to take the youth seriously. You have to involve them. So the youth need the following things. I'll bring them in a point form. The youth need the skills and knowledge. Different implementing partners, you have to make sure that in the programs, there must be an aspect of capacity building whereby you impart the right skills and knowledge for the youth. An example from the youth think tank research, previously I had no skills in how best to do the research, in how best to develop the questions, to do the data collection. But through the training, the first training we had, it brought me on board that I had to understand what it takes to develop the questions, what it takes to go even to the field. So that's very crucial. The skills and knowledge is very important when we want to involve when you want to involve the youth. Not only that, there's need to give them the clear roles and responsibilities. When you want to work with them, when you are involving the youth, there is need to give them the clear roles. What are they supposed to do? With research development, they gave us the laws, the timelines. You are supposed to do this. You are supposed to go and do data collection during this time. We went in the field. So we're given the power, we're given the laws and what we are supposed to do. There is also a need that you are supposed to give the youth decision-making process laws. Like you have to allow them influence the decisions that you are taking in the programs that are affecting them. So in short, those are some of the things that must be taken seriously if the programs will be successful when you are engaging the youth.
Yeah, I think right now, at least, I'm thinking about three things, and I'm trying to see how we're incorporating it in our program, and I put it to you to find potential ways. So I think the first thing is agency, and I think that definitely looks differently in different ways, and he's definitely touched upon that, so I won't dwell on that. What's exciting to me and critical is the next two things. The second thing is just the systematic way of approaching these programs, acknowledging that, one, like a single solution is, one, impossible, but also ineffective. And so finding ways in which we're partnering with other people to develop like a multi-tiered, multi-layered, multiple aspects solution, what that looks like in that context, to make sure that's localized. But the third thing is scale. We cannot overstate how big and massive and difficult and complex the problem is. And for me, I think it's very easy, and it has become the focus to focus on much smaller, interventions, which I do believe are critical. But for me, the exciting thing is to push that needle. Pushing that needle means finding and designing and trying to find ways to scale, our current successful impacts. And that, of course, is tied to making sure that we're building a solid, reliable evidence base of what is and isn't working. And that, to me, is kind of the next step right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm surprised when I heard that Jabulani started talking. When Mike asked the question, I thought the same things. So it actually surprised me, but also that makes us think that Jabulani in Malawi and myself in El Salvador, we're thinking about the same things. So maybe that should actually tell us something, that means something. I just want to add a little bit. In El Salvador, we have this saying that says, cada quien sabe dónde le aprieta el zapato. Everybody knows where the shoe squeezes, and so only I know where my feet actually hurt. So only I know what are my needs, what do I want, and how I want to do it. So that's also important, and I think is key for us that work with these kind of programs. Just that.
Excellent. Thank you. So we're down to 2 minutes. So rather than take another question, what I would like to do is now turn it back to you. So I'd like you to turn to one person at your table. And I want you to think in that kind of adult learning continuum of what, so what, now what. from what you just heard from our young panelists, share with each other for these 2 minutes one or two things that you took away, or one or two things that you're somewhat struggling with in engaging youth with someone at your table that you're going to be thinking about the rest of the day of how do we really move from kind of where we are on youth engagement to an ideal or a better level. So you have 2 minutes. Grab the person next to you. I just want you to process what you heard, what was a takeaway, or what is a challenge you're dealing with. So you have 2 minutes. Thank you, guys. I'm going to close at the end. Hold on. But thank you so much. I know it went really fast. And so.
Pero estamos abriendo la oficina en San Miguel. Yo vivo en San Miguel. Vivo en San Miguel, viajo a Morazán todo el trabajo. ¿Sí? Yo los puestos que tenemos. No he visto todavía dónde están. ¿Qué voy a ir a ver? No, acaba de salir.
¿De verdad?
Estamos haciendo entrevistas ahora. Que no me di cuenta. 3 posiciones para una oficina que vamos a abrir en San Miguel porque... Pero después... Qué lástima. ¿Cómo no me di cuenta? Pero si no encontramos, tal vez... Si lanzan convocatorias. Pero ya lo hicimos. Pero que tal vez, si usted vive allí, bueno, el equipo está ahora haciendo las entrevistas previas y voy a ir, dígame que no hay como la semana de octubre. A San Miguel. A San Miguel para hacer las últimas entrevistas, pero tal vez... No, y cualquier cosa que no sea, estamos a la orden. Sí, tal vez podemos ver con mi equipo pero con ustedes sí, con el equipo de la vamos a ofrecer una subvención en a una ONG o compañía que trabaje con...
All right, let's see. We're passing the baton to Anna and
para ayudar a los jóvenes.
Cassandra, are you introducing Anna and Hashim?
Es justamente lo que pasa. Sí, porque no tienes conocimientos técnicos.
Thank you, guys. And then pass it to you.
Tu idea, entonces hay unas ONGs en San Salvador, pero estamos buscando cómo hacerlo en Oriente. En Oriente, ¿y qué es de la zona más? Nosotros solamente trabajamos en comunidades donde el Plan El Salvador seguro tiene... Es que se más por el tema de la violencia, ¿verdad? Entonces justamente Morazán en violencia no está tan alto. Por eso no trabajamos en Morazán. Pero también hay que esperar a que llegue, ¿verdad? Justamente. Bueno, en el gobierno están, algunos dicen que no debemos de solamente enfocarnos en eso, pero... Ahí quiere tener su enfoque en donde el Plan El Salvador. Entonces, acabo de firmar 2 subvenciones con Univos y otro con... Ese me di cuenta porque conozco gente de Univos. Sí, acabo de... Pero sí, grandes subvenciones. Entonces, siento que ojalá nos dé un espacio para pero una oficina pequeña con 3 personas. Sí, pero
Okay. Hopefully we have a lot more time for the multi-directional conversation today. I want to thank one more time our panelists, Juwalani, Alexis, and Alicia. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you. And we're going to transition now to an activity by 2 other of our young leaders, Aitana Hujalari and Hashim Yusuf. Aitana is an Atlas Corps Fellow with Making Sense, and Hashim Yusuf is a consultant with the Youth Forum in Sudan. So they're going to lead us in an activity as we transition to our next session. So Aitana, they're there.
Thank you very much. Good morning.